A blast that shakes the ground, sends dust into your lungs, and darkens the morning sun. Now imagine realizing that this is not just another earthquake or loud thunder. It's a volcano that hasn't erupted in over 12,000 years, and it has suddenly exploded back to life. That's what just happened in Ethiopia, and the real fear isn't the eruption itself. It's what it might trigger next, because some scientists believe this sudden awakening might be the first domino in a chain reaction that threatens over 25 million people living across the East African Rift. Others argue it's nothing more than a freak blast, a volcanic hiccup that means nothing. That disagreement alone should make everyone nervous. And the craziest part? Nobody seems to agree on how bad this could get, or whether something much bigger is already building beneath the ground. Let's dig in, before the next tremor hits. Haile Gubby, the volcano at the center of this unfolding crisis, was practically considered dead. Not dormant, dead. It hadn't erupted since ancient humans were still figuring out how to farm. For generations, people lived around it with zero fear. It was a mountain with a crater, nothing more. Then, out of nowhere, it detonated. A pillar of ash shot so high into the atmosphere that satellites caught it in minutes. Villages miles away were instantly coated in fine, gray dust. People reported a shockwave that felt like a punch to the chest. Even animals panicked. Herds scattered, birds vanished, and dogs started howling before the ground even shook. And here's where the mystery deepens. There were no warning signs, no earthquakes, no rumbling, no magma swelling. Nothing that normally comes before a volcanic blast. That has volcanologists scratching their heads. Some say it's impossible. Volcanoes don't just explode out of silence. Others insist this isn't silence at all. It's something else entirely. Something deeper. People often imagine volcanoes as rivers of lava flowing down mountains. But the real killer in this eruption was ash. Not fluffy fireplace ash, but microscopic shards of rock and volcanic glass, sharp enough to slice lung tissue like sandpaper. Within hours, entire communities were breathing toxic air. It burned the throat. It stunk the eyes. It made every breath feel heavier than the last. Ash clouds drifted fast, carried by strong winds that pushed them across borders and seas. Planes had to reroute mid-air because volcanic ash can stall engines instantly. Flights were canceled across multiple countries. Travelers were stuck. Airports scrambled. This wasn't some local natural event. It was already an international problem. But the ash was only the beginning. The East African Rift is one of the most unstable places on Earth. A giant scar running through Ethiopia where the continent is literally tearing itself apart. That tear creates deep cracks, earthquakes, magma chambers, and dozens of volcanic systems. Millions of people live on that unstable ground because the land is fertile, the water is accessible, and communities have been there for centuries. But here's the terrifying question. Scientists are whispering right now. If a silent volcano suddenly erupts, what else in the rift is waking up? For months, another volcano not far from Haile Gubby has been acting strange. Small tremors, steam bursts, ground cracking like pulled taffy. People were already evacuated once this year because of fears it might erupt. But strangely, it never did. So now the scientific world is caught in a bizarre contradiction. The volcano that looked dangerous stayed quiet. The volcano everyone ignored blew up. That doesn't make sense. And when nature stops making sense, that's exactly when people start getting scared. The official reports say no one has died, at least not directly. But life has already been ripped apart in ways that don't show up on immediate statistics. Farmers can't feed their animals because ash blankets the grazing land. Families in nearby towns can't go outside without covering their faces. Children are coughing. Tourists were trapped and had to flee. Roads disappeared under gray dust. And with every hour, more ash falls, carried by winds that don't care about borders or warnings. What's worse is that the people living closest to the volcano are some of the most vulnerable economically. When ash destroys your livestock, your crops, your water supply, there's no insurance check coming. There's just uncertainty. And beneath all of this, the ground is still shaking from aftershocks, which leads to the biggest fear scientists won't say publicly yet. What if this eruption wasn't the main event? What if it was only the opening act? Scientists are scrambling, but they're not agreeing. Some experts think the eruption was triggered by a deep magma surge that's been building for years. Others believe it's part of a rift awakening, where multiple volcanoes and faults become active at once. And a few warn that if pressure is shifting underground, another volcano in the region could erupt next, possibly with far more strength. But the wildest theory circulating quietly behind the scenes is that the eruption could signal a long-term tectonic shift, where parts of the rift begin to open more rapidly than expected. If that's true, then this isn't just one eruption. It's the first sign of a geological transformation that could reshape the region for generations. But nobody can confirm it. And that uncertainty is the scariest part. Scientists are racing against time, trying to get clearer readings on seismic activity, but the equipment is limited, the terrain is harsh, and the eruption threw ash over many of the monitoring stations. So everyone is operating with incomplete data. Guesswork, partial readings, conflicting interpretations. And while scientists argue over what's happening underground, people are watching the ridge of the volcano, wondering if that dark plume on the horizon is growing thicker. Because here's the question no one wants to say out loud. What if this eruption is not the peak, but the trigger? If you think what just happened is shocking, wait until you hear what might be coming next. The East African Rift is like a wound that never fully heals. The continent is tearing itself apart piece by piece at a pace too slow for humans to notice day to day, but fast enough for entire volcanic systems to shift in a single night. Imagine a zipper that's being pulled open from below. Every eruption, every quake, every crack, it all adds up. The sudden explosion of Hale-Gubby raises one terrifying possibility. What if deep magma has begun moving again across the entire rift zone? Some geologists believe a fresh surge could be spreading through underground chambers, the way ink spreads through cracks in paper. When that happens, multiple volcanoes can wake up nearly at once. Not necessarily erupting immediately, but becoming restless, unstable, unpredictable. And the signs are already appearing. Days after the eruption, sensors in nearby regions began picking up tiny tremors. We're talking microquakes, the kind too small for humans to feel but large enough to hint that something is shifting underground. Normally, microquakes are harmless, but not when they appear right after a major eruption in a system filled with other volcanoes. To make things stranger, small bursts of steam were spotted from fissures far away from Hale-Gubby, places that haven't shown activity in decades. Even satellite images show the ground warming in certain patches, as if magma is creeping closer to the surface. Some scientists argue these signals mean nothing. Others say they could be the early warnings of something bigger. This disagreement isn't comforting. It's unsettling. Because when the people who dedicate their lives to understanding the Earth can't agree on the meaning of its movements, you know the stakes are high. Picture this. A huge magma chamber beneath the rift shifts. One volcano erupts. The pressure doesn't disappear. It reroutes. It travels. It squeezes through cracks. It searches for weaknesses. Now imagine that pressure reaching another volcano that's been quiet for centuries. Not enough to erupt instantly, but enough to wake it. Enough to start trembling. Enough to begin gas release. Enough to destabilize the land above it. This is called a volcanic domino effect. It's rare but not impossible, and the Rift Valley is one of the few places on Earth where such a chain reaction could realistically unfold. Why? Because the volcanic systems here are interconnected in ways we still don't fully understand. Craters miles apart could share parts of the same deep plumbing. Pressure in one chamber could affect another, like two lungs breathing the same air. The eruption of Hale-Gubby might have been one lung exhaling. What if the next lung is about to inhale? Here's something people don't talk about enough. Volcanoes don't have to erupt to be dangerous. A magma surge beneath the surface can deform the land. It can open long cracks that split villages in half. It can release toxic gases silently in low-lying areas. It can heat underground water into explosive steam pockets. In some places, ground uplift, the gradual rising of the land, is already being measured. That means magma is pushing upward. But the scariest part? we don't know where it's headed. Some experts believe it will rise directly beneath the volcano that just erupted. Others think it will migrate sideways. A few insist it might be feeding a completely different volcanic system that hasn't erupted in thousands of years. The contradictions just keep stacking up. Every theory sounds plausible, and every theory leads to a different possible disaster. While scientists debate underground pressure maps, people on the ground don't have the luxury of waiting for consensus. If the volcano that should have been the safest erupted first, which volcano is next? Scientists are running out of time to figure that out. The data is incomplete, the ground is shifting, and the next move might already be in motion, because somewhere under the rift, something is moving. Slowly, quietly, steadily. And if it reaches the surface, we might be talking not about 25 million people at risk, but the start of a geological event the world is not prepared to handle. If this kept you on the edge, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because as new developments unfold, you're going to want